this video we will be looking at demographic structure of Indian society. Okay, you're looking into Indian society, chapters of Ncert. Okay, I'll just give the introduction of these chapters. After that, we'll go to the main topics that are to be dealt with respect to UPSC GS1 series. Okay, demography is a systematic study of population. The term is of Greek origin and is composed of two words, demo and graphein. Demo means people and graphein means describe, implying the description of people. Demography studies the trends and processes associated with population, including changes in population size, patterns of birth, deaths, and migration, and the structure and composition of the population, such as the relative proportions of women, men, and different age groups. There are different varieties of demography, including formal demography, which is largely quantitative field, and social demography, which focuses on social, economic, and political aspects of population. All the demographic studies are based on the processes of counting and enumeration. Okay, based on statistics, such as the census or the survey, which involve the systematic collection of data on the people residing within a specified territory. And also, demography is a field that is of special importance in sociology. In fact, the emergence of sociology and its successful establishment as an academic discipline owed a lot to demography. Two different processes helped to take place at roughly the same time in Europe during the latter half of the 18th century. We have read about this in our history lessons or in the GS initial lectures of GS1 series. Okay, the formation of nation states as the principal form of political organization, the beginning of the modern science of statistics. The modern state had begun to expand its role and functions. It had, for instance, begun to take an active interest in the development of early forms of public health management, policing, maintenance of law and order, economic policies relating to agriculture, industry, taxation, and revenue generation, and the governance of cities. Okay, now we will look into different aspects related to the Indian society or demography. One of the major aspects that I think it's important for UPSC is the declining sex ratio in India, because it is related to women. These points that we discuss now can be related in our points on women empowerment, which is also another topic in the GS1 syllabus. Okay, declining sex ratio in India. The sex ratio is an important indicator of gender balance in the population. As mentioned in the section on concepts earlier, historically the sex ratio has been slightly in favor of females. That is, the number of females per thousand males has generally been somewhat higher than 1000. However, India has had a declining sex ratio for more than a century. Okay, we will discuss the table. Table is given here. I'll discuss it later once we read these points. Okay, from 1972 females per thousand males in the turn of the 20th century, and the sex ratio has declined to 9,933 in the turn of 21st century. The trends of the last 4 decades have been practically worrying. From 941 in 1961, the sex ratio had fallen to an all-time low of 927 in 1991, before posting a modest increase in 2001. According to Census of India 2011, sex ratio has increased and now it is 943 females per 1000 males. Okay, but what has really alarmed demographers and policymakers, social activists, and concerned citizens is a drastic fall in the child sex ratio. Age specific sex ratio began to be computed on 1961. As it's shown, I will discuss the table again. The sex ratio for the 0 to 6 years age group, known as the juvenile or child sex ratio, is generally been substantially higher than the overall sex ratio for all age groups, but it has been falling very sharply. In fact, the decade 1991 to 2001 represents an anomaly in that the overall sex ratio has been posted its highest ever increase of 6 points from the all-time low of 927 to 933, but the child sex ratio has dropped from 945 to 927, a plunge of 18 points, taking into below the overall sex ratio for the first time in 2011 census. The child sex ratio decreased by 13 points and now it is 919. Okay, this is the table 3. Okay, now we are saying what we are seeing over here is this is for the adult population. Okay, sex ratio for all age groups. Okay, in 1901 it was 972. From there has been a decline. Only on 1951 there was 1 point increase. Okay, considering the previous year, and again it was decreasing -5, -11, and in 1981 there was a 4 point increase considering the previous year, and again it decreased, and as we have said in the earlier session, on 2001 there was a +6 increment, and finally 10 point increment in the 2011 census, and finally it is, as of 2011 it is 943 per 1000 males. Okay, and when we are considering the child sex ratio, which began to be calculated on 1961, from there we can see all these years have been a substantial decrease, and from there 1961 the final value is 919. Okay, that has been a worrying factor. So now we will look at what are the causes of decreasing child sex ratio. Okay, and we will see the state level distribution. The state level child sex ratio offer even greater cause of worry. As many as 9 states and union territories have a child sex ratio under 900 females per 1000 males. Haryana is the worst state with an incredibly low sex ratio, that is even below 800, that is 793, followed by Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, Delhi, Chandigarh, Uttarakhand, and Himachal Pradesh. Okay, we will look into the map later. Uttar Pradesh, Daman and Diu, Himachal Pradesh, Lakshadweep, and Madhya Pradesh are all under 925, while larger states such as West Bengal, Assam, Bihar, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka are above the national level average of 919 but below the 970 mark. Even Kerala, which has the highest child sex ratio, has reached only 964, and only one state, that is Arunachal Pradesh, has 972. Now, what are the reasons for the decline in sex ratio in India? Okay, these are the points that can be written or help you in a good answer writing in mains. Okay, the main health factor that affects women differently from men is childbearing. It is relevant to ask if the fall in sex ratio may be partly due to the increased risk of death in childbirth that only women face. However, maternal mortality is supposed to decline with development as levels of nutrition, general education and awareness, as well as availability of medical and communication facilities improves. Indeed, maternal mortality rates have been coming down in India even though they remain high by the international standards. So it is difficult to see how maternal mortality could have been responsible for the worsening of sex ratio over time, combined with the fact that decline in child sex ratio has been much steeper than the overall figure. Social scientists believe that the cause has to be sought in the differential treatment of girl childs. Okay, this is a map which shows the share in the sex ratio. We can see in the northeastern states much above 900 value is seen, and especially in the southern region we have Kerala about 951 value. Okay, and also where Chandigarh is there. Chhattisgarh we have about 951. Okay, these are some of the facts, some of the statistics. Several factors may be held responsible for the decline in the child sex ratio, including severe neglect of girl babies in infancy, leading to the higher death rates, sex specific abortions that prevent girl babies from being born, female infanticide, that is killing babies due to religious or cultural beliefs, Each of these reasons point to the serious social problem, and there is some evidence that all of these been worked in India. Practices of female infanticide may have been known to exist in many religions, while increasing importance being seen attached to modern medical techniques in which sex of the baby can be determined by sonogram, which is originally developed to identify the genetic and other disorders of the fetus, being used to identify and selectively abort female fetuses. Okay, these are some of the causes of declining sex ratio. Now, the regional pattern of low child sex ratio seems to support this argument. It is striking that lowest child sex ratio has been found in the most prosperous regions of India. According to the economic survey, for a recent year, Maharashtra, Punjab, Haryana, Chandigarh, and Delhi are having high per capita income, and the child sex ratio of these states is still low. So, the problem of selective abortions is not due to the poverty or ignorance or lack of resources. For example, if practices like dowry mean that parents have to make large dowry payments to marry off their daughters, then prosperous parents would be the ones most able to afford it. However, we find the sex ratio to be the lowest in the most prosperous regions. It is also possible that the issue is still being that an economically prosperous family desire to have fewer children, often only one or two now. They may also wish to choose the sex of their child. This becomes possible with the availability of ultrasound technologies. Okay, although government has passed strict laws banning this practice and imposing heavy fines and imprisonment as punishment, known as the Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques Act, this law has been in force since 1996 and has been further strengthened in 2003. However, in the long run, the solution to problems like bias against girl children depends more on the social attitudes evolved, even though laws and rules can also help. Recently, the government of India introduced a program, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. It can prove to be an important policy to increase child sex ratio in the country. Okay, now we look at another important aspect, that is literacy. Literacy is a prerequisite to education, is an instrument of empowerment. The more literate the population, the greater is the consciousness of career options, as well as participation in the knowledge economy. Further, literacy can lead to health awareness and fuller participation in the cultural and economic well being of the community. Literacy levels have improved considerably after independence. Almost two-thirds of the population of our population is now literate. But improvements in the literacy rate have to struggle keep up with the rate of growth of India's population, which is still quite high. Okay. And literacy varies considerably across gender, across regions, across social groups. Okay. We will see that in the table 4. The literacy rate of women is 16.3% less than that of the literacy of men. However, female literacy has been rising faster than male literacy. Female literacy rose about 10.4% between 2001 and 2011 compared to the rise in male literacy, that is 7.6% in the same period. Literacy increased approximately 8% in total. Male literacy rose about 5%, whereas female literacy rose about 10%. Again, female literacy has been rising faster than the male literacy. Okay, literacy rates also vary by social group. Historically, disadvantaged communities like SCs and STs have lower rates of literacy, and rates of female literacy within these groups even lower. Regional variations are still very wide, with states like Kerala approaching universal literacy, while states like Bihar are lagging far behind. Inequalities in the literacy rates are especially important because they tend to reproduce inequality across generations. Okay, and illiterate parents are at a severe disadvantage in ensuring their children as well are well educated, thus perpetuating existing inequalities. Okay, now literacy rate in India. We can see from 1951 males we have it was 27% of males and it has increased to 80%. Okay, and that same time in 1951 it was 8.9 percentage, and finally in 2011 it increased to 64.6 percentage. Okay, and the gap between the two has somewhat in a zigzag manner, but it has continued to reduce, and in 2011 it is the lowest of all. Okay, now we'll look into rural and urban differences. The vast majority of the population of India have always lived in the rural areas, and that continues to be true. According to the Census of India 2011, still more people are living in rural areas, but the population of urban areas has increased. Now 68.8% of the population lives in rural areas, while 31.2 percentage people live in urban areas. Okay, and the population has been increasing its share steadily from about 11 percentage at the beginning of the 20th century to about 28 percentage at the beginning of the 21st century, an increase of about 2.5 times. It is not a question of numbers alone. Processes of modern development ensure that economic and social significance of agrarian rural way of decline relative to the significance of industrial agricultural sector has been declining, and more industrial lifestyle is increasing in India. Okay, that is a major cause. Agriculture used to be by far the largest contributor to the country, but today it only contributes 1/6 of the GDP. And although majority of our people live in rural areas and make their living out of agriculture, the relative economic value of what they produce has fallen drastically. Moreover, more and more people who live in villages may no longer work in agriculture or even in village. Rural people are increasingly engaged in non-farm occupations like transport services, business enterprises, or craft manufacturing. If they are close enough, then they may travel daily to the nearest urban center to the work while continuing to live in village. Okay, and there is also the effect or the influence of media and communication, which now bringing images of urban lifestyles and patterns consumption into rural areas, especially in the lockdown periods. We can see the complete shift in the lifestyle of people. Consequently, urban norms and standards are becoming well known even in the remote villages, creating new desires and aspiration for consumption. Okay, and even though there are people moving from rural to urban areas. Considered from an urban point of view, the rapid growth of urbanization shows that town or city has been acting as a magnet for the rural population. Those who cannot find work in the rural areas go to the city in search of work. This flow of rural to urban migration has been accelerated by the continuous decline of common property resources like ponds, forests, and grazing lands. These common resources enabled poor people to survive in the villages although they owned little or no land. Now these resources have been turned into private property or they are exhausted. If people no longer have access to these resources, but on the other hand have to buy many things in the market that they used to get for free, like fuel, firewood, supplement other natural producers, then their hardship increases. This hardship is worsened by the fact that opportunities of earning cash income is limited in villages. Okay, sometimes the city may also be preferred for social reasons, especially the relative anonymity it offers. The fact that urban life involves interaction with strangers can be an advantage for different reasons. For the socially oppressed groups like scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, this may offer some partial protection from the daily humiliation they suffer in the village. In villages, we can see the prevalent use of caste system. Okay, but in urban areas, most of the people are busy with their own duty or their own work. They are trying to meet their ends meet there. They fail to see caste system. They don't identify people based on their caste. Okay, that is a very good plus point. The anonymity of the city also allows the poor sections of the society, socially dominant rural groups to engage in low status work that they would not be able to do in the village. All these reasons make the city an attractive destination for the villages. The swelling cities bear testimony to this flow of population. This is evident from the rapid rate of urbanization and the post independence period. Okay, Now, population policy in India. It will be clear from the discussion in this chapter that population dynamics is an important matter and it crucially affects development prospects of a nation as well as health and well-being of the people. This is practically true of developing countries who have to face special challenges in this regard. It is hardly surprising, therefore, that India, that had an official population policy for more than half a century. In fact, India has perhaps the first country to explicitly announce such a policy in 1952. The population policy took the concrete form of National Family Planning Program. The broad objectives of this program have remained the same to try to influence the rate and pattern of population growth in socially desirable directions. In the early days, the most important objective was to slow down the rate of population growth through promotion of various birth control methods, improve public health standards, increase public awareness about population and health issues. Over the past half century or so, India has been mainly significant achievements to her credit in the field of population. Okay, family planning programs suffered a setback during the years of national emergency. Normal parliamentary and legal procedures were suspended during that time, and special laws and ordinances were issued directly by the government that were in force. During this time, government tried to intensify the effort to bring down the growth of population by introducing a strict program of mass sterilization. Here, sterilization refers to the medical procedures like mastectomy and tubectomy, which prevent consumption and childbirth. Vast numbers of mostly poor, powerless people were forcibly sterilized, and there was massive pressure on lower government officials like school teachers and office workers to bring people for sterilization in the camps that were organized for this purpose. Okay. There was widespread popular opposition to this program, and the new government elected after the emergency abandoned this. Okay. The National Family Planning Program was renamed the National Family Welfare Program after the emergency, and coercive methods were no longer used. The program now has a broad based set of socio demographic objectives. A new set of guidelines were formulated as part of National Population Policy of the year 2000. In 2017, Government of India came out with National Health Policy, in which most of the socio demographic goals were incorporated with new targets. Okay, the history of India's National Family Welfare Program teaches that while the state can do a lot to try and create the conditions for demographic change, most demographic variables are ultimately matters of economic, social, and cultural change. Okay, so this was about basically the demographic structure of Indian society, and you can look into this aspect, the important goals of National Health Policy of 2017. Just read through this because whenever a question arises based on population, these points can be applied in your mains answer. So I hope today's class was productive. This is also a part of my revision. So I hope, even though if I make any mistakes, please do comment in the comment box so that I can rectify it and be more productive towards to the next video. So with that in mind, I conclude today's video. God bless you all. Until next time, Jai Hind.